T-minus 40 seconds and counting. The external tank heaters on the ET to orbiter structural attachments orbiter computers have an auto sequence start. T-minus 26 seconds, 25. T-minus 21 seconds, the SRB nozzle gimbal profile underway. T-minus 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10. We have a go for main engine start. 7, 6. We have main engine start. 2, 1, 0, and liftoff. A new era for planetary science begins as Atlantis clears the tower.
Houston, Atlantis, roll problem.
Roger, roll, Atlantis.
This is Mission Control. The roll program confirmed. Standing by for engines to throttle down. All 3 engines will be throttled back to 65% performance as the vehicle passes through the area of maximum dynamic pressure. Three engines now at 65%. Velocity now 1,000 feet per second. Atlantis 2 miles downrange. Engines now throttling back up to 104% performance. Atlantis velocity now 1,500 feet per second.
Atlantis, go at throttle up.
Atlantis, roger, go.
Standing by for separation from the SRBs. Velocity now 2,000 feet per second. Altitude 10 nautical miles. Downrange distance 8 nautical miles. This is Mission Control. All APUs looking good. 3 engines at 104%.
Okay, we got SRB set.
This is Mission Control. SRB SEP confirmed. Velocity 4,300 feet per second. Atlantis downrange 30, looking good at 104%.
Franklin Chang Diaz with us. Speed now over 3,000 miles an hour. The most critical stage is when the solid rocket boosters light and then until they separate.
That's right, the first 2 minutes of flight.
And they said performance nominal, so they got a good burn.
Everything looks good.
The crew know that the SRBs and engines are providing the expected thrust.
Now coming up on 3 minutes since liftoff. What goes through your mind in those first 3 minutes? It's not a real busy time for you if, in the back.
Well, we're all very busy actually.
Atlantis,
we're all monitoring, we're all backing each other up, making sure the procedures are done according to the timeline. It's just a very tense.
That call means that Atlantis could make it to the transatlantic abort site on only 2 engines should that become necessary. Velocity now 5,600 feet per second, downrange 84 nautical miles at an altitude of 47 nautical miles. All 3 APUs still looking good. 3 engines at 104%.
For anyone who might have just joined us, 3 minutes and 40 seconds ago, Atlantis, after a nail-biter of an afternoon, made it off the launch pad 39B at the Kennedy Space Center. They were definitely having problems with the weather. Here's a look at what you might see if you were lucky enough to be aboard Atlantis as it streaks towards orbit. We have at the University of California, Berkeley, a simulation inside the cockpit of what would be going on right now. A very, very busy time for the front cockpit.
That's right, and the call was made just now that said negative return, which means that the RTLS problem for the weather at the Cape is no longer an issue. They're going to go, if they're having a board, they're going to land in the downrange abort sites, or they're going to go to orbit. So the Cape weather is no longer a problem.
The books that you see with all the notes that they're looking at.
Very cryptic cue cards and very cryptic procedures in a very convoluted language that only astronauts can understand. And they give us cues to check different dials and different gauges at different times, basically.
I should point out once again that the picture you're seeing on the right half of your screen is a simulation by students and a professor at the University of California, Berkeley. They have put together an entire computer simulation program from liftoff to landing of Atlantis. They will follow throughout the mission, going through what they go through, the deployment of the Magellan. And they just got the call pressed ATO.
That's right. That means
abort to orbit is possible at this point. 400 feet per second.
So this, they are now going to be able to go to orbit. Let's take a look now at what goes through a launch. We have some animation of what happens when the solid rockets separate.
when the solids separate, you're basically in the outer fringes of the atmosphere. You're out basically in the border of space. And of course, you got to attain a very high velocity to be able to enter into orbit. And that's what you see in the animation. And of course, the tank separates when the fuel is all spent, and the tank re-enters the atmosphere and burns out. The shuttle now has enough velocity to almost be in orbit. It needs a little bit of a kick that happens later, and that is the OMS 1 burn, when the orbital maneuvering engines are ignited.
All right, CNN's John Zarella is at the Kennedy Space Center, and John, the weather didn't look like it was going to cooperate, but evidently there was a hole in a cloud, and they took advantage of it very, very quickly.
Boy, they sure did. They pushed it right to the edge of that envelope, and they got the Atlantis off the ground. And I guess right now, about a minute or so before main engine cutoff, that's the last big critical hurdle. And as you've heard, they're pressed to MECO, pressed to main engine cutoff, and they're on their way to orbit. Tom?
Of course, we of course will continue to follow Atlantis' flight. And the other breaking story that's occurring in Washington, the verdict is in the Oliver North trial, and he has been found not guilty of some counts, but guilty of others. And our coverage of both stories will continue in just a few moments.